Okay, hopefully you can all see that. You should be able to see me at the top. Weirdly, I can't see myself, but never mind. That's probably good, actually. So welcome to this masterclass. So obviously it's a PressPad masterclass. We've been running these since lockdown began. We're a social enterprise, and we usually match interns with senior journalists who have a spare room and need somewhere to stay while they do work experience placements and internships. And the whole idea is to help break down the financial barriers into journalism. When the pandemic hit, we pivoted to an online program because we knew how worried all the young journalists were about all their work experience being cancelled, and all like the entry level jobs not being posted. So because obviously there's hiring freezes, so we've been doing loads of different things, including CV and pitch clinics, Q&As on Instagram, and lots of masterclasses. So let's do that. There we go. So I'm Nicola Slawson. I'm a freelance journalist, and I'm also I also obviously work for PressPad. We'll talk about that later. Because obviously I've diversified my income stream, which we will be discussing. So I've been freelance this time since September last year, and before that I was freelance for 3.5 years straight after graduating from my MA. I basically just went straight into freelancing, and then I got a staff job and realised that actually I preferred freelancing. So I always like to sort of illustrate these talks with stories because I think it's just more interesting. So I thought I'd tell you about the first time I was freelance, because I mainly did it through shifts. Now, if you don't know what a shift is, it's where you don't have a proper job at a place, but you get you sort of fill slots if somebody is sick, or in my case at The Guardian, I was a news reporter at nights and weekends. And they never know how many people they're going to need depending on what's going on in the news. It's maybe difficult to get the staff journalists to do the nights, to the evening shifts, because they might have families and stuff. So a lot of newsrooms rely on shifters, I don't know if that's the right word, casual staff I should say, to sort of fill those slots. So as well as doing news reporting shifts, I was also doing shifts on the Guardian professional networks, which are sadly no more. So my first paid shift was after I finished my Scott Trust Bursary internship. Basically, I just hung around for an extra 2 weeks and hoped that I'd get a job. Instead, what I got offered was shifts. So the first one was on the health professionals network. So I was doing editing and some newsletter stuff and social media stuff, and then I started on the news desk. And because I was in the building a lot, I also wrote most of my freelance work was also for The Guardian. So these are some of the examples. So I think this one was actually the one, I don't know whether you can see, sorry, I'm going to add the pointer because then I know you're definitely seeing it. So this one was actually part of my final project, my final project on my MA. So I didn't pitch the entire thing, but it was my final project was all about where adults with learning disabilities, should live when they turn 18 and become adults. Should they stay at home? Should they go into institutions? Should they live in supported living? It was kind of a big debate, and it's kind of like a bit of a controversial topic, and things have changed over the years. Anyway, so we were told on the course, try and pitch your final project. So I spoke to an editor that I'd done work experience for, and she liked this part of it here, which was about a different kind of setup called shared living. So that was one of my first things that I wrote for Guardian Society. And as I'm going to talk about later, once you do one thing for somebody, make sure you keep them pitching, because that's how you get regular work. So the one here also came from basically my final project, although I didn't write any of these words in my final project, but the idea came from a visit that I did to a college for people with learning disabilities, and they train them up to actually work in like proper jobs. So this lovely lady was being trained to work in a hotel. Now with the new shifts, you're doing just whatever they need you to do, and it's kind of weird. You sort of just get plonked on the news desk, and you have to try and make sure you get some bylines that day. It's easier at night because there's no other reporters, so you end up writing everything. And then occasionally you get a nice front page byline, so that was good. And this is another story that I had a month off. And I went to Morocco for a month, and I decided to try and get a story while I was there. Didn't know what to expect, and ended up doing this this article, which is one of my favorite ones I've ever done, because it was about this amazing little tiny charity that was all run by Moroccans, and they help girls get into education. So it was really cool. And that was in the Observer, so the Sunday paper. So the first time I was freelance, I was mainly at the Guardian, but it was mainly shifts and freelance work. So that's one way to do freelancing, basically, is just to sort of get some shifts and basically almost move in. I mean, I was there all the time. And once you wander around the newsroom, you see an editor and they say, "Oh, are you available? Have you got any availability?" And you say, "Yeah, sure." Always say yes. And then they say, "Oh, great, I just need this feature on X, Y, and Z. Can you file it by blah, blah, blah?" And yeah, I just got loads of work just because I was in the newsroom anyway. So I did work for other places, not just the Guardian. I actually spent 2 months in Berlin as part of this, it's called IJP. It's a fellowship program, and it's a German thing, so people can go from all over Europe. So I got to go and work at Die Welt, which is a German newspaper, and this is one of my articles, which is all about Brexit and the family arguments, which is something I would never write about in this country, because I wouldn't want my parents to read it. But it's fine because they don't read German. I didn't write this myself, by the way. I wrote my part of it in English, and then somebody translated it for me, because my German is not that good, even though I studied it for 5 years at school. I also randomly got a job as the London correspondent for the Christian Science Monitor. That was kind of through someone at the Guardian, actually. And it was a freelance gig, but it was a regular gig. So that means you can rely on getting at least one article a month. I basically had to find a UK story that people in America might be interested in. So it was quite interesting. It's really different from everything else I've done. It was more analysis and explainers. So I wrote about the fact that we had a loneliness minister at one point. I had to do quite a lot of politics stuff, including Brexit, of course. But it was really varied, and it was quite interesting. I've seen that they're advertising that job. So I also did 2 shifts at metro.co.uk, only 2. It was fun, but then I just picked up loads more Guardian shifts and I just didn't really have time. But that was fun because I got to write sort of more lifestyle kind of stuff, which I hadn't done that much of. And one of my editors went to work at the Telegraph, because I used to sometimes do shifts on like the sustainable business and small business sections of the Guardian. and she went to work at the Telegraph, and so commissioned me to do a bunch of articles. And this was my favourite one, actually, because I love speaking to people. Obviously, I'm a journalist, I love speaking to people, but I really like this one because I'm I'm not a business journalist, but I was able to do this kind of stuff. So it's more, that was in the Sunday Telegraph as well. So my one uncle was really proud because he doesn't read the Guardian, so he was very impressed that I was in the Telegraph. Okay, then the second time I went freelance. So I've been freelance for 3.5 years. And then I decided to get a staff job. I went to HuffPost as the assistant news editor, and I stayed there for 15 months, and then I went freelance again because I actually realised that I much prefer it. This is not going to be the case for all of you. So some of you might do what I did and start out as freelance and then land a staff job. And others of you might try it for a little bit as something to tide you over. And you might hate it because freelancing isn't for everyone. But I absolutely love it. I much prefer it. But the second time I went freelance, I decided to do things a little bit differently because I didn't want to rely so much on shifts. Shifts are great, but you obviously have to live in London, and I was hoping to leave London. As you'll see, I did leave London because you can read this article in the Eye, and I wanted to branch out a bit and write different stuff, and like develop myself, basically do a bit of professional development. So these are some of the things I've written about since I've been freelance. Obviously this is not the article, but I wrote for The Journalist about BBC pay row, so that was cool. This is for Positive News. I write for them really regularly because I started my journalism career at Positive News as an intern, and then later I was working on the editorial team and writing for them. So I still write for them loads. This is my first piece for Refinery 29, and I'll talk about this later because it's the fastest I've ever been commissioned for something. And this one was one of the first times I've actually replied to one of those call outs that people do on Twitter, because I swear I'm always too late, or I just see like the call out and then my mind goes completely blank and I can't think of anything that would fit the bill. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's where you see an editor go, call for pitches, we're doing a new series on X, Y, and Z, and we want your freelance pitches, on this particular topic, email me now, basically. So the person who commissioned me this, I actually used to work with at The Guardian. So I follow her on Twitter, and I saw she did a call out, and I replied straight away, just emailed her. And she used to work for the Metro as well. So I'd written for her once before, not when I did a shift. So yeah, that was that one. The journalist one was actually, I'd written for them when I first went freelance, when I first finished uni. And then I got back in touch about something to do with PressPad, actually, and just was chatting to the woman, the editor, and she said, oh, by the way, you don't happen to be available like in the next 2 days to really quick turnaround story? So of course I said yes. And I wrote the article and it goes in print, so that's nice. I like going in print. And then the other exciting thing that happened this time I've been freelance is I landed a really cool project. So this came from an editor that I worked with at HuffPost, who also used to be at The Guardian. It's such a small world, journalism, so be nice to everyone is my advice. Actually, I used to start a shift at 5 p.m. at The Guardian, and she'd be like just packing up to go, or she'd be staying there until like 6:30. So that's how we sort of got to know each other. And then we both ended up at HuffPost, and then she went to the Evening Standard and asked to go for coffee, and then offered me a year-long project, which as a freelance journalist is basically, it's like gold dust. It's as close as I've got to a retainer, and a retainer is where publication pays sort of a star journalist to write a certain amount of articles a month, and they pay you a standard fee each month, and then you just write for them regularly. So lots of people For example, who's on a retainer? Sirin Kale, she's amazing. She's on retainer, I think. Yeah, she is. I think she is. Elle Hunt. So the people who write for G2, loads of people as well, like Sophie Hayward, I think, as well, and I think maybe Hannah Jane Parkinson. I'm not sure. So they write regularly for a publication, well, The Guardian, but they don't necessarily work there every day, or they don't go into the office at all. They just work from home because they've got this regular thing. That's my dream, so that's why I'm going on about it, because I would love that. But this is as close as I've got. So every month there's a double page spread or a single page spread now because of COVID, but in the Evening Standard, and it's all about air pollution. So by the end of the year, well, actually, because of the pandemic, it's now finishing in February next year. I will be a total expert on air pollution, which is not what I expected. But it's been really interesting. And yeah, it's great because I just know that money's going to come in, and I'm doing journalism as well. And then the other thing is I have my fingers in lots of pies. So I obviously work part-time for PressPad, and I have a newsletter called The Single Supplement, which I have a paid for version, so I'm starting to get income from that. I do masterclasses with Tiffany Philippou on life writing, which is another income stream. I sometimes do talks at universities or other events, and I get paid for those most of the time, not all. I've even been on Sky News as like a talking head. I only did it once. It wasn't a great experience, to be honest, because sorry, got distracted by the team talking to me, not by friends or whatever. Yeah, so the best thing about this time round being freelance is I realised that if you put all your eggs in one basket, such a cliche, all my cliches, all my eggs were in the Guardian's basket before, and it's not the best way of doing things, because as we've seen, things go bust. I'm sure the Guardian won't, but obviously they're losing a lot of staff. They're going to be tightening their belts. And I went through, there was a whole period of redundancies in 2016, 15. And I was originally told they're cancelling all casual shifts. And my income was almost entirely the Guardian. So you can imagine like the panic that I suddenly had. So this time around I was like, let's not do that again. So now I try and have my fingers in lots of different pies, and do lots of different things, so that I've always got different income streams. So if one goes, I've still got other stuff going on. And I forgot to mention, but I also still work for the Guardian, so I still do shifts, but I do probably 2 a month, 2-3 a month max. And I still write for them freelance as well. In fact, I've got an article going in the paper next Wednesday, so that's exciting. So benefits of going it alone: freedom and flexibility. One thing I struggled with at HuffPost is the shift patterns there, especially because we were so short staffed. I get insomnia, and I also am terrible in the morning. It actually makes me vomit or retch if I wake up early. And when I'm saying early, I mean like I used to have to wake up at 5 to get to the office at 7. And I just can't function, basically, because I'd be up all night not being able to sleep with insomnia, and then I'd have to wake up early. And there was no choice, and I had to work most weekends. And especially when you work in a small team, you just have to muck in, obviously. So I just prefer having the flexibility to wake up when I want, to work late in the evening, because if I want to, because I work better sometimes in the evenings. Yesterday I had a day off midweek and went paddleboarding with friends at a lake. I mean, obviously you could do that if you had a job, because you could just book it off, but But yeah, it's just a different sort of mindset. There was another time when I was able to surprise my dad for his birthday because I did all of my work earlier in the week. So you're still kind of doing the same amount of work, or you can just have a quieter week. I love the variety. I love that I write all sorts of different things for all sorts of different people. I actually love the hustle. Now, this isn't for everyone, but I really like it. That's what I missed when I had a staff job, because it's totally different. You don't have to like network and hustle in the building. When I was at the Guardian mostly, I'd be hustling left, right and centre. I was called the queen of the hustle because I would just hear about someone with a pot of money, and then I go over and say, hey, do you want a coffee? And the next thing I'd land that gig, because I landed loads of different little things at the Guardian. So even though I was at the Guardian, I had loads of different jobs at the Guardian. So I almost had my fingers in lots of pies at the Guardian as well, actually. Yeah, you develop entrepreneurial skills. One of the first things I did when I went freelance was I got given a free, because I'd worked with her at Positive News and I'd helped her out with something. She gave me a free workshop on her, sorry, I'm not saying who it is, Danielle Batiste, and she's amazing. She doesn't do this anymore, but it's called Journalpreneurs. I'm going to tell her to restart it because it's so good. But it's about being entrepreneurial as a freelance journalist. Obviously, we're all good at writing and things like that, but you have to be good at being entrepreneurial as well. Ability to survive changes in the media landscape. Now, it might seem a bit weird to say this, but I think if you're a bit nimble and you're able to like switch things around and realize where you might have income or money, then you're going to survive, especially now in this current climate. Because we're always going to need journalists, and if you can adapt and change and learn new skills, then I think it stands you in really good stead. Some people who've been in staff jobs for years and years and years and don't know any other way, they're going to find it harder, but not impossible at all, but they might find it harder to be freelance and sort of have to do that hustle and have to ride the waves of the feast and famine, which is where you get loads of work and then you get no work and you have to sort of manage that. The feeling of having fingers in lots of pies, I really like it. I get bored really easily, so I like to do lots of different things, work with lots of different people, and you can earn more. This is probably weird to say, maybe, I don't know, but I've always been also better with my money when I'm freelance. When I was in a staff job, I was just pretty much like, oh, there's more money coming in my bank account in a few weeks time, so I'll just spend some money today. Whereas when I'm freelance, I manage my money much better. I'm like hyper aware of what's going in and out of my account. I'm just so much better with money when I'm freelance. So so there's that, but I also earn more than when I had a staff job. So the other thing I would say is I hated having a staff job because you got like a set amount in money each month, whereas when I had a holiday, obviously it would be okay if I was really good at saving, but I'm not very good at saving. But what I love about being freelance is I think, oh, I've got a holiday coming up, so I'd front load and do extra work before the holiday, and then I'd enjoy my holiday and then get back. Whereas when I had a holiday when I had a staff job, I don't think I calculated it all correctly, and then I just had no money for like the rest of the month, and it was really awful. But I did find that I did earn the same, if not more, than my peers who I did the MA with. I mean, there are lots of freelancers who are really struggling, so it is difficult out there. But if you're entrepreneurial, you diversify your income stream, and you're really like flexible and you work really hard, then you can, I believe. there's also the benefit that yeah, you can't get fired, and you can't get made redundant. There's obviously loads of redundancies when you're freelance. No one could make me redundant at the Guardian, because when there was a huge wave of it before, I think it was like 270 people left, and it was really scary. But I felt quite prepared for it, because I was like, okay, I've just got to find some other work now, and started emailing people. And I think that's actually why I ended up at Metro, and then it turned out that actually they weren't cancelling all the casual shifts, so I was fine. So yeah, it's quite a nice feeling knowing that you can't be fired. The downsides, obviously, instability. Yeah, you can be thinking like me, oh yeah, I've got it made, I've got this like Evening Standard project, it's a certain amount of money each month. It was pretty much a third of my income, so it was pretty big. And then suddenly the pandemic hits and that project got paused, and so it's like, great. So there's instability, having to chase invoices and pitches. This is probably the thing that people hate the most about being freelance. I have been quite lucky with the invoices. I haven't had any of the really bad. I've heard people who've gone, 6 months without having £2,000 or something like that. I've been lucky. It's only been a few months, if it has been a problem. Most of the time, actually, it's not a problem. And I'll talk about this later. But the one thing you should do is, instead of just contacting the editor, just call up the accounts payable. So you just call up the newsroom on the Google their number, call up account and say, can I speak to accounts payable? And then they put you through, and you just say, I was just wondering if there's a problem with the invoice, or if there's anything I can do, because it seems to be late. And they might say to you, oh, the editor actually hasn't approved it yet. And so then, like, you can go back to the editor and say, oh, I think there might be a problem. Or they might say, oh, you're on the next pay run, and then they just put it through. So I've usually always called them up. Yeah, constantly having to hustle. Now, I love hustling, but lots of people hate it. And sometimes it does get exhausting. Difficulty switching off. This is something I've had a problem with. This is not factually correct, so I can't really say that, but I think, for me, I was more likely to get burnout when I'm freelance, because I just say yes to everything, because I'm scared of saying no to stuff. And so I ended up just working all the time, in the periods of feast, and then yeah, have difficulty switching off. You don't know whether your editor's going to message you at like 8 p.m. on a Friday. I have had that. People's perceptions. If you're a freelance journalist, often people just think that's not a real job, or it's just a stopgap. There's a bit of stigma, to be honest. The fellowship program that I applied for, I was having dinner with a bunch of other journalists who I did my MA with, actually, and mentioned to one of them, because I knew that he wanted to be a foreign correspondent. I said, oh, you should apply for this. And he said, oh, I've got a job. No, I've got a real job. I can't remember what he said, but it was really rude. He basically thought it was like something if you didn't have a job, but it's actually like quite a prestigious thing for all journalists to apply for. And I was freelance, so I did have a job, thanks. I was really upset about that, actually. I was like, I don't know what you're saying, because I do have a job. Yeah, people just think, oh, you're only freelance because you couldn't get a job, stuff like that, which I hate, and it's not true. I feel much more successful as a freelance journalist than I have done in staff jobs. Having little power, yeah, things can change. Things like the Guardian Weekend magazine can suddenly shut down. You've got no say in it, and you've lost all your work. I mean, I don't write for them. They were my dream publication, so it's sad. That wasn't me crying. I was me itching, by the way, but I was quite sad about it. It's difficult to plan for the future. Yeah, I used to have like a journalism bucket list of places I wanted to write for, and kind of big projects that I wanted to do, like a radio program or radio documentary. But so you can have those kind of like plans for yourself, but you can't, it's not like you can be like, right, in 5 years time I'll be editor, whereas you can a little bit in a staff job, because you can kind of see the career path. But things change so much in journalism that you might be on that career path, and then get made redundant. So arguably you can't really plan for the future really in any journalism job. And then the other thing, obviously the downside, is you have to do your tax returns. Now, I actually don't think these are as difficult as they make out. The most annoying thing is that you have to do them and you have to sit down and do them. So I've actually just got an accountant now, but I previously I've done 4 years worth by myself. The reason I've got an accountant now is because most of my work is freelance now, whereas most of my work before was the shift, so it was PAYE, and only a certain portion of my income was freelance, so it was quite easy for me to do. So you have to do tax returns, but they're not as bad as everyone says. The first one is the worst one because you have no idea what any of the stuff means, and all I did was Google every single thing it was asking me. There are lots of guides on the internet. Even the HMRC now do like video stuff, and you can get people to help you as well. So ask for help or ask Google. Okay, so what I've done is I've got a series of freelance journalists to join in this masterclass. So I asked them all, what's the one thing you wish you had learned before you started as a freelance journalist? So I'm just going to play this. I've just realised that I forgot to check whether the sound will work. Let's hope it does. I'll give it a go and see what happens.
Hello, I'm Emma Wilkinson.
I'm just going to check. Can you hear that, everyone?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yay.
I'm one half of Freelancing for Journalists, which is a new book out today. We don't actually have copies of the book yet, which is really annoying. Apparently they are on their way. So I've printed out this lovely picture of what the book looks like so you can see it.
And I'm Lily Cantor. You may also know us from the Freelancing for Journalists podcast, and we also have a Facebook community, so come and find us.
Yes, so we wanted to each give our top tip of the one thing we wish we'd known when we started out freelancing. So mine is, you will end up doing a far wider range of things than you ever thought you would. When I first started, I started with some news shifts, and I really struggled with thinking what my freelance career would look like and who I would be working for. And I've actually ended up working for all sorts of different people, but also doing lots of different things, speaking at conferences, organising conferences, writing the book, doing the podcast, but also things like editing reports and editing science papers and kind of things related to journalism, using my skills. So don't worry too much, just be open to those opportunities, and there will be lots there if you're willing to take them on.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I'm the same. I do lots of different things as Emma does. And the other thing, though, that I really think I wish I got to grips with a lot sooner is to do with negotiating rates. So I've had situations where an editor has offered me a rate for a story, and I've gone, yeah, that's great. Been happy to be getting paid for my words. But actually, what I've learned over time is there is room there to negotiate and to ask for more money, particularly if you're having to provide something very quickly, or you've got photographs, or it's a strong exclusive that you can sell elsewhere. Then there really is room there to have that discussion with the editor. So don't just always accept the same rate or the first rate that you get offered. This will vary from publication to publication, but it's always worth bearing in mind that they may be going in with kind of the minimum amount that they're willing to pay. So don't be afraid to negotiate. And in order to empower yourself in that process, get to know what the usual rates are. So look at lists on Journal Resources, on the NUJ, and find out what the typical rates are for the publications that you want to work for, and then you'll be in a much stronger position when it comes to negotiating.
Absolutely, that's really good advice, Lily. I hope this helps everyone.
Amazing. So thanks very much to Lily and Emma. They've got their book out today, Freelancing for Journalists, and they've also got a great podcast. So do check them out. And I just thought that was really good advice. Yeah, you'll end up doing the most random things. I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the things that I've done as a freelance journalist. Probably a really random thing I did was I ended up at like the social care managers conference, and it was in Llandudlo in northern Wales. I think it was something to do, it was like, but it was people who work in councils, and it was like the directors of social care conference. And those guys are wild on the dance floor. There was like a dinner, and then afterwards I couldn't get over how fast they moved to the dance floor. The guy doing the band was actually one of the directors of social care for like some council. So that was a really random thing. It's not very glamorous because it was Wales and it rained, but it was quite fun. And yeah, I got sent there and I got to stay in a really nice hotel, so that was nice. And also, yes, on the negotiating fee, I don't do this very often. I should, and but I did do it for my Evening Standard project actually, and I was really scared, but yeah, it was great. I'm glad I did it because I got more money. Okay, so I'm just going to exit this, and I'm going to answer a few questions which Io's going to put to me. Yeah, Io's got the right names there, so I'm just going to come off this and then we'll go back. We might have some of the questions, oh, that's how I do it, sorry, answered. So, Io.
Hey.
Hey.
We have a lot of questions. Everyone on the chat, please continue to put questions in, but I'll try and cover as much as possible. Firstly, are freelance shifts always given informally, or are they ever advertised?
Yeah, sometimes they are advertised. Have a look on Gorkana. Actually, it's not called Gorkana anymore, it's called Cision. Yeah, I've seen shifts at like The Sun, Mail, and also broadcast shifts advertised on there. My shifts weren't advertised. What happened was I was doing got the Scott Trust bursary, and I had a story that I did when I was on work experience that I found myself that basically went viral, and I basically impressed the news editors, and went for coffee with one of them. I asked like basically how to get a job here, and they said, oh, we can put you forward for some shifts. So mine was totally informal. And then another editor who'd basically taken me under her wing heard that some shifts were going on this health desk and just took me round and introduced me, and the next thing I got booked onto a shift, and I couldn't believe it because I'd only just started. I hadn't got paid for like journalism work apart from that positive news thing, but yeah, it was exciting. So yes, they are advertised.
Thank you.
But also make sure you email editors. Sorry, I should say they are advertised, but don't let that make you think that there are no shifts. There are always shifts going at publications and at broadcast. I mean, just before Christmas, I was asked if I wanted to do some shifts as like an assistant news editor on, I can't remember where it was, ITV, something like that. I couldn't do them at the time because we had the PressPad crowdfunder. But always email and email editors. And if you pitch something, you can then say, I don't suppose you know if there's any shifts going. So yeah, you have to hustle. What's next? I'll just do 3 and then I'll go back.
Okay, 3, trying to pick the best 3 out now. How do you pitch without Twitter?
Ooh, I don't understand that question. Without
as in not seeing like people call out on Twitter?
Oh, I see. Well, I'm covering pitching shortly, so we will get onto that. I will skip that one because I'm going to answer it.
Kevin, How do you get freelance shifts if you don't live in London? I think there was a few questions about like getting freelance shifts outside of London and stuff like that.
Yes, sometimes they are remote, very occasionally. So my friend decided to move to Greece because she wanted to get experience reporting abroad, and she was able to get shifts randomly at Hello magazine, and she did them remotely, and she was just kind of doing celebrity news for their website 2 days a week. So that was her like bread and butter. That's what paid the rent. And then she was able to do freelancing. So there are freelance shifts sometimes available. At the moment, they're remote. So The Guardian, I'm doing my shifts from Shropshire. Now I'm staying in Shropshire. I don't know what's going to happen when things go back to normal, whether I'll just lose those shifts, and it's possible I will. Yeah, I've also done shifts for The Independent from home. So yeah, it's worth asking, but yeah, sometimes they're not going to let you do it. At The Guardian, often you're sent out to things in London like massive protests and things, so you have to be in the thick of it. But if you live, near a big city, like Birmingham is not that far from me, so I might start looking at what the BBC is doing in Birmingham, whether there's shifts available there. There's obviously Salford, Manchester, Channel 4 have got a thing in Leeds. You never know where, even your local local papers as well. Obviously you get paid less there, but you get to do, like, I've got friends who've done shifts at local papers and had front page splashes, so it's really good for your profile to go and work at a local, even just doing shifts. I was actually going to do it at one point, but then I got offered something else. But yeah, that's worth it as well. Or local radio stations and TV as well.
Thank you.
Maybe one more, because I didn't answer the pitching one.
Okay, then one more. Olivia asks, how do you adapt to different writing styles for each publication? Do you ever struggle to keep in style?
Oh, this is a great question. Because I was trained at Positive News before I did my MA, and Positive News uses the Guardian style guide, so it's almost kind of like Guardian style anyway. And then when I was on my MA, I was writing for the Guardian with the internship that I was doing, and I also got a little bit of freelancing. And then I started doing shifts, and I always say, like, I was trained at the Guardian because that's where I was like a little baby journalist, and they molded me and told me, what not to do and what to do. And you see something being edited like a few times and you think, okay, I've got to remember not to do that, so the editor doesn't have to do it for me. So yeah, I found it quite difficult when I suddenly got those shifts at the Metro, because the other thing about it was they write really fast at the Metro. And then when I got the Evening Standard project, both me and the editor were like former Guardian journalists, and she actually sent it to her editor to check that we hadn't made it too Guardian. So there are different styles, and you do get used to a certain style. I think I'd find it really challenging to go and do shifts at the Mirror, which I have been offered before. I would kind of do it just to see what it was like, but I think I would be you have to really read the publications to see how they write, and if you've got stuck in one thing, like I obviously do write in a Guardian style, I think, then I think it's harder. But if you start out doing shifts at loads of different publications, that's probably better actually, because you'll just like develop, okay, today I'm doing tabloid. Yeah, I'm not really the best person to answer this question, because actually when I did my exam at my MA, we had to do like, write this article as if you're writing for the Mail. Okay, write this one as if it's the Sun. And no time in that exam did it come out as write this as if you're writing for the Guardian. And so I actually did really badly in the exam. But writing for the Telegraph was not too dissimilar, but they've just got a different style guide. So like I did all the percentages wrong and stuff like that. But I read what the editor had done, the edit, and I sort of adapted for the next few ones that I did for the Telegraph. Cool. Was that all of the question?
We still have more questions, but we can get to that later.
Thanks, Io. Okay, I will come back because I'm probably going to answer some of your questions, and then we'll try and get the ones that I haven't answered. So I'll see you in a minute. Well, you'll still see me, but I'll see you, Io, in a minute. Cool. Let's go back. Okay, so how to get started. So you've got to register yourself as self-employed with a HMRC. I was going to sort of explain how to do this, but actually it's quite self-explanatory. You just go on the website and register self-employed. So make sure you do that. I did it pretty much. I think I finished my MA in the June, and I registered as self-employed in the June. Loads of my colleagues obviously went and got staff jobs, but I was pretty adamant I was staying at the Guardian, and so I knew that I was going to have to register as self-employed. A thing that I didn't do that I wish I had done is set up a separate business account. Now, the reason for this is it will make your tax returns so much easier if you can just see one account where everything goes into. I spent hours of my life trawling for where invoices had been paid into my account when the first time I did my tax return. And now I've got a separate account, which I've got Tide. So it's an app on your phone, and it's like a fintech kind of company, so it's a bit like Monzo, but it's for business, and so it's not really scary to set up, because I was thought business bank account, oh, I can't set that up, but Tide is very simple, and it's just really easy to use. Make use of invoicing software. I use Wave. I love it. I'm in love with Wave and Tide together just make my life so much easier. I used to use Free Agent, and I'm really terrible with figures and numbers, and it just made my brain hurt. I didn't understand it. If you're better with numbers and you're quite business, you've got sort of business head on you, you might want to go and use like Free Agent or Xero, I think it's called. Those kind of scare me, so I use Wave. It's really easy to use, but it does tell you your income and cash flow and stuff like that, so you can get all of that kind of information if that floats your boat. Work out a way to save your receipts, again with Wave. Wave. They've got a separate receipts app, and the first thing I did, one of the first things I did when I was freelance in September, was go down to Brighton for a story. So I bought my train tickets and taxis and stuff, and did all the receipts on Wave, bought them with the Tide bank account, and then I was able to do my expenses for that story. On that note, always ask, if you are going somewhere to do a story, always ask about what expenses there are. Often you'll get, like, you can have lunch and like train ticket maybe, or maybe just a train ticket, but you know. Write a business plan. Now, I actually haven't done this time around, but I did do some of this kind of stuff. Like, I wouldn't say it was like a proper plan, but it was kind of like towards a plan. This time I am going to start writing a business plan. So yeah, I wish I had done this before, and I have got another video for you which will explain why this is important. So here's Laura Oliver. Now, she's the co-founder of the Society for Freelance Journalists, and she's also one of the nicest freelance journalists out there. The Society for Freelance Journalists was set up a few months ago, and it's a Slack workspace basically for freelancers. So you can just hang out there while you're working and chat. It's got loads of different channels. They advertise opportunities, events, even full-time jobs. And it's also, they do really cool like live chats. There was like one on finance, and I asked loads of questions from these experts, and that was really cool. So do join that after this, but not tomorrow because I'm going camping tomorrow. But next week I'm going to send out an email with loads of resources, because I just realized I had so much, and it'll just like be really confusing in the chat at the end. So what I'm going to do is send a separate email, and I'll put a link for the Society for Freelance Journalists. It's free, and it's just really cool to hang out with other freelancers virtually. Here's Laura.
So Nicola asked me what I wish I'd known before I went freelance. And the thing I wish someone had told me was that you need to think of yourself as a business. Freelance journalism often gets mentioned as if it's a different medium somehow. You know, you've got print journalism, you've got broadcast journalism, digital journalism, and then you've got freelance journalism. But actually, you're going to work across all those mediums possibly. And really the big difference is that you are now a business owner. You have the power to choose how and when you work, the areas and skills you focus on, but you've also got other things to think about, like accounting and having the right office equipment and setting up networking and building your profile without the backing of an organisation that you work for. So get a business plan in place as soon as you can. That sounds a bit scary, but it doesn't have to be. Start off by laying out what you want to achieve maybe in the next month or even the next quarter to be extra businessy. It could be financial goals, publication goals, personal goals, and then get into the habit of really regularly reviewing that and how you're doing. I didn't have this for ages and found it hard to keep track of what I'd done, and I was getting caught up on comparing what I'd done yesterday and what I'd done today and what I was doing tomorrow, which is pretty stressful, and no 2 days are really the same, so it helps to have something that can pull you back a bit and look at the bigger picture. Extra bonus, if you are planning and reflecting in this way, it not only helps you set a kind of direction for your business and your career, but I think radically changes what your idea of success is too, and gets you closer to a definition of success that is more personal to you. Anyway, good luck, and I hope to meet you all along the way.
Oh, love Laura. So yeah, I didn't really explain that very well when I said about the business plan. I hadn't done it, but I have done a similar kind of thing. I went to a freelancer away day just before Christmas, and it was all about like goal setting and yeah, working out like where I wanted to go and really focusing on that. It was amazing. It was Anna Codrea-Rado and Harriet Minter. They do it every year. I hope they do it this year, actually. It was so good. I found it really, really useful. And what I used to do as well is I had a freelance journalist friend who was basically my accountability partner. I don't think we use that phrase, but we did have a phrase that I've totally forgotten. But we basically would have meetings sometimes on like Zoom where we would talk about whether we had like hit our goals, whether we'd earned enough, whether we'd pitched enough, whether we'd written for any of our like bucket list publications, and we'd do that separately from our friendship where we'd, you know, go down the pub or whatever. So we'd do like a specific session where we would just talk about our freelancing, and also one New Year we met up in person and went through this booklet thing, which I'll try and find, and we really set our goals for the year, and like really we broke it down over each quarter as well, so it was really cool. Laura wrote an amazing blog after her first year of freelancing, which I'm going to share in the resources, and she also shared in that blog, which was on Medium, a link to an amazing resource to write a business plan. So I will share that next week when I send the email out, so you can all write your own business plans. And I'm also going to do mine as well, because what I meant to do was do the freelancer away day and then like write it up as a proper business plan, but instead it's just like notes in my planner, which is not as fun. Okay, so this one's a very quick one, just to say about coming up with ideas, because I know that some people might be asking this. So how do you come up with ideas, especially if you're not in the newsroom? When in the newsroom you go into meetings, you have to come up with ideas, and you're very embedded in the news cycle, even on the features desk. and you're reacting to the news, as well as working on bigger projects that maybe your editors come up with. As a freelancer, you're kind of sitting at home going, oh, what should I write about? And you might have tons of ideas, and then you might have no ideas. So I had an email from an editor this week asking if I had any ideas for stories. I literally, my mind was like, I can't think of a single one, which is terrible. But it's partly because I'm kind of only working part-time this week because I'm going away, and I had yesterday off. So I think my mind was just focused on like my PressPad job and not on, I didn't really have that many freelance days this week. Did I have any? I had one and a half a day, I think. So I had no ideas basically, which is not ideal. He's still going to be there next week, so I'll just have to come up with something next week instead. So the reason I've got this random picture here is because one of the ways to come up with ideas is to think about things in your life. So I wrote this article when I was living on a boat in London, and I was listening to all the boaties as they like to call themselves, and they were saying like, oh, I was living on the river, actually, not the canal, but they were saying, oh, there's so many new boats on the canal, it's getting really clogged up, and loads of people are going onto the canal who don't have any idea what they're doing, and they're doing really dangerous stuff or stupid stuff. And they were really complaining about this problem, and I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. Is it just becoming like a trend? And it's because of the housing crisis, and at the time the housing crisis was in the news a lot, and so I pitched it to the news desk and said, hey, and I think I went to the Canals and Waterways Trust, Canals and Rivers Trust, I think it's Canals and Rivers Trust, something like that. And I said, hey, I've heard there are loads more boats. Can you tell me if this is correct? And so they dug into it. They knew it was correct, but they also had to get me some data because I needed some facts. And they have these licenses, they could easily work it out. And there was like a big percentage rise in people applying for the licenses. So then I went to the editor with the story. I had a case study as well, as you can see. And I had a stat, like an exclusive stat that nobody else had. And so I wrote that story. That was one of my first freelance things I did, actually. And then the other thing for coming up with ideas is to read widely. So this is just like what I could find before this started. So this Telegraph, there's even Good Housekeeping, sort of randomly, Grazia, obviously The Guardian, because I'm slightly obsessed, The Times. There aren't any tabloids up here, but I do get tabloids as well. So usually what I do is I go into a newsagent and just pick 2 random newspapers and a magazine maybe, and I just read them. I used to do this in a staff job as well, so I'd get in early and sit down and read the papers, and even if you think the story's kind of been like completely done and there can't be anything that you could do, you can still like do the story slightly, not do it differently. You can bring the story forward, or like with Positive News, I used to have to like trawl all the news and then think of like, can we investigate or find some solutions to all these problems that the newspapers are talking about? And we'd always be able to find someone doing something cool to try and solve the problem that was, in the news. So it's kind of like thinking a bit differently. Also, another one of my first things I did for The Guardian was my mentor, Dennis Campbell, who I've spoken about before. He was reading an article in the Mail, actually. It was a column, so it was an opinion piece, and it just mentioned in passing that there were people with eating disorders who were unable to get hospital treatment. It was about something related, but it was kind of just mentioned at the end. And I can't remember if it said something bad, like, they're dying before they get help or something awful. And he decided to see if this is true. So he rang up a bunch of eating disorder charities and also like a unit he had a contact at, and I helped by I did the case study. So we had a news story, and then we had a separate case study blocked out, and so I interviewed a young girl who'd really struggled to get treatment because there were so many cuts, basically. So those are 2 ideas for coming up with ideas. The other thing is just listening to everyone. I mean, yesterday I was paddleboarding with a bunch of, most of them were, in fact, all of them were teachers or worked in schools apart from me. And they mentioned this thing, and I was like, oh my God, that might be a story. So I'm going to pitch it to an editor I know that might be interested next week. So I'm not going to tell you so you don't nick it. So yeah, listen to everyone, be really nosy and curious, think about your own life and things that are happening that you think are not special but might be something unusual. So yeah, I was living on a houseboat at the time, so that was kind of a bit different, and that's where I came up with that idea. Okay. Now, how to pitch. I have to say, I've got this sort of this plan from the amazing Newsflash media training. I did their course earlier this year, and it's really helped me with my pitching, and I have to give them full credit, really. I have also had help from Donna Ferguson. She's doing an amazing pitch masterclass, which I highly recommend. She was our Q&A guest on Wednesday, so you can also go and watch it on IGTV. She is amazing at building relationships with editors, so I highly recommend her masterclass. And the Newsflash also do amazing, I love them, they're so cool. So this is how I format my pitches. I'm not going to read it because you can read, so this is basically what I do, try and keep it short. I try not to do the third paragraph here, do that, so that should be 3rd or 4th depending on whether you've written a really long one. I've actually written I've copied one of my successful pitches. Oh, what's going on? This is really small writing, I'm really sorry, but this is literally a structure. This was one I wrote earlier this year for the Eye. So Heather had very nicely named me as like a woman for the International Women's Day. She did like a thing about the women who were speaking out about things that you don't usually speak about, and she included me for talking about being single because I've got my newsletter, and she said, oh, please do pitch if you've got any ideas, because she knows a freelance journalist. So I had to obviously come up with an idea, and so I came up with this one. So here's the headline in bold, and what I do for this is I read what the kind of headlines they use in the section that I'm actually pitching for, and I think, okay, that's kind of the format of their style of headline, and then I kind of copy that format for my article. And the reason you do that is to try and make their job easier, so they can literally think, oh yeah, that would fit perfectly. Even that first line, you think, oh yeah, I can see that in the section that I write, that I need, that I've got this slot open for. So yeah, try and make an editor's life easy. You also want to grab their attention, but if you write it in the style that publication that you're pitching to uses, they're going to really think, oh yeah, this is the perfect fit. The Refinery 29 one, I was going to copy and paste that, but it was longer and it would have been even smaller writing. But basically that one, the headline was almost identical to the one that she chose. The only thing she added was my age. So it said something like, I've never felt more single because of coronavirus. I can't remember exactly, but it was almost exactly. And that's because I had a look at the headlines that she'd been using for other features and sort of use the same format. Yeah, I got commissioned that one within, I think, 10 minutes or something like that. So what I usually do is the first paragraph I write kind of as if I'm writing for the actual publication, and that's the start of the article, although to be honest, usually I start with a case study when I'm doing a reported feature. But that's kind of to show that you can write and to show, to hook them in and think, oh, you want to leave them wanting to read it. So I've done this slightly differently. Normally this one I say, in this reported feature, I would interview blah, blah, blah. So then I say who I'm going to speak to. You don't have to name names. You could if you want. I don't tend to, or sometimes I do one, I'll name one that I know will definitely say yes. And then I say something general like a therapist. And then this is the sort of article about, paragraph, sorry, about why she needs to do this. I didn't do a line, but if I hadn't have known her, I would have explained that I write about being single a lot, so I'm the perfect person to write this article, but she already knew that. So let me know if you like any further information. And she said yes. I think she actually had a query like, do you think any of these people really want to be pictured, because they need, you know, for a feature they really need case studies to be pictured. And I said, oh, I'll come back to you. And I went and found loads of case studies who were willing to be pictured, have their photographs. And I went back to her and said, yes, I've got loads of choice. I've got this person. And then she properly commissioned me. So what next? There's no question mark there. I'm really sorry about that. So it's a yes. So congratulations. The next thing you need to do is ask when, you know, sometimes they'll say this, but they'll say the deadline. Or they might say, when do you think you could file it by? Be realistic. Don't say tomorrow if you're writing a massive reported feature and you're not going to be able to do it by tomorrow. Because the crucial thing is making sure you do exactly what you say you're going to do so that they commission you again. So the deadline, think about the deadline, ask the fee. It is not rude to ask the fee. This is work, this is business. You're not doing them a favor. They're not doing you a favor. They're not like, oh, you get to write for us. You're providing, you're selling your words, your article, your idea. And when you sell things, you get money. So you have to say, what's the fee? Can I ask what the fee is? As Lily said, you can try and negotiate and just say, is there any wiggle room, which is a kind of annoying phrase, but does work. Or you could say, I've done a similar thing for this other publication. Would you be able to match that? So I did a talk at university, which is a bit different, and they offered me a certain amount of money, and I said, oh, well, this other university paid me this, can you match it? And they said yes. So ask for the fee, check the word count. Something that the Amazing Grace Holiday does, which you'll hear from her later, she then writes back saying, so I will provide this for this fee at this time, here's a rundown of what it will include. And she just says that back to them, which I'm going to start trying because I think it's really good. And sometimes the editor will come back, you know, and they'll say, yeah, but what about, and they'll ask a question, and just try and find whatever the thing that they need is and say, yeah, I can definitely do that. And then find a way to do it. Don't lie, obviously. If you definitely can't do it, it's totally impossible. Make sure you're upfront. And if you've said in your pitch that you want to speak to a certain person, and then that person says no, or they're too busy, just be honest with the editor. Just go back and say, I'm really sorry, this happened to me earlier this year, did something for Positive News, I wanted to include this certain money influencer, and she had like a family bereavement, so I just went back to the editor and said, I'm really sorry, that person that I did mention in the pitch actually can't do it, but I found this other person. So anytime you're talking to an editor about the problem, always try and have a solution at the ready. Don't forget to invoice. I can't believe I'm even putting this, but I actually did do this recently for my Evening Standard project. The editor said, I don't think I've had your June invoice. And I said, that can't be right. Went on my invoicing software and it wasn't there. So make sure you actually invoice. That was silly. And then, yeah, once you've done one thing for an editor, and hopefully they loved it, pitch them again and soon. So then you start building that relationship, because that's how you get regular work. If it's a no, or worse, there's no answer. If it's a no, thank them. Oh, that should have said time there. And then you could ask for feedback. Donna Ferguson would definitely say do this. Or you could say, oh, what kind of things are you looking for? But definitely reply and say, thanks so much for letting me know and getting back to me. I really appreciate it. I'll pitch something else next week or whenever. But to build that relationship, you've just got to, you can't just be like, oh, they said no, so I'll never pitch them again. The Refinery 29, I actually pitched something, I never got an answer. And then was chatting to her about something completely different, and she said, oh, by the way, do send me a pitch. And I was like, I sent you one, but you ignored it. But I think she didn't get my pitch, so she never saw that pitch, which is fine because I got it published somewhere else. But then I sent her this fresh pitch, and it was perfect for her section, and so she commissioned me. If it's there's no answer, make sure you chase. It's not rude to chase. One of my favourite editors at The Guardian, she said to me, look how many unread emails I've got, and she had 30,000 unread emails, and she literally only opened emails, I think, of people she actually knew, or if the subject line was really good. So there's a lesson. Make sure your subject line, I use the headline. Oh, I forgot to say, don't say pitch, because apparently PRs now use that. So say either freelance pitch or freelance idea or feature idea. I started trialing a few different ones. But if you just put pitch, they might think it's just PR. So yeah, always pitch again and soon. Don't get disheartened. Pitch the story elsewhere. Now we're going to hear from another freelance journalist, Miranda Larby. The sound goes a bit weird on this one. It sort of goes in and out of quiet. I don't know why. But she does have some good advice, so I'm going to play it anyway. No. Oh no. Oh, sorry. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Miranda Larby and I'm a freelance journalist. I went freelance in January after about 5 years working in national papers and a short stint working in politics. And before going freelance, I didn't really know much about it, but I did have a few friends who had already gone freelance. And I think the thing that I was very worried about before taking the leap was the fact that there might not be any work coming in. And I was very alive to the fact that I might have to do shifts. So as soon as I went freelance, I managed to get myself a couple of regular shift gigs, which I'm still doing. Like I have 5 days a week, days of work, but for different people. And then based on my specialisms from when I worked in national papers, which is health and fitness mainly, and a bit about race, I've managed to get commissions to do on top of it. So actually, like a lot of people warn, you end up doing a lot of work, which is obviously great for your portfolio and for your finances. But I think a lot of people said to me that it takes time to work out how much you can actually do in the time that you have. And actually, it's not a case of worrying like when the next bill's going to come in. It's a case of just juggling all your day shifts, your long-term projects, your short-term projects. So my advice would be just really manage your time and work out what it is you need to do, like how much you really need to be earning a month, and then what things are beneficial to your actual career. So those big projects that come from national papers, for example, are obviously really important. You need to make time for them. But your daily shifts are going to be the things that pay your rent. And that's something I'm still working out, and 7 months later, it's still a balancing act and whatever else. But I think the more that you settle into it, the more that you can sort of be a bit more discerning about the jobs that you take on, and you can demand that people pay you properly. Also, the thing I found is that I'm not pitching for those big things, those big projects that are coming to me. So I don't know what it's like for other people, but I found the fact that I've like kind of done my time in national papers and magazines. I've made all those contacts before I went freelance, and people knew that if they wanted something on sustainability or fitness, whether that's running, cycling, or maybe they want something on sort of the mixed race identity, for example, then I'm a good person to go to because I have like years of experience behind me of writing on those topics. It's not like I've had to pitch afresh for something that I'm not qualified in or have no interest in. So I think it's really important to sort of work out what your niche is. Who do you know in that who might be commissioning that sort of specialism? Perhaps when you go freelance, let those people know that you've gone freelance. And then, you know, whether that's on your social media or whether it's emailing them just saying, look, I'm no longer working with X. If you ever need anything, contact me. And then just making sure that when you do get those initial commissions, you are getting everything in on time or before time. It's completely to spec. You haven't rushed it. All those sorts of things that you would be doing anyway in your normal job. But I think it really does matter that when commissioning editors are coming to you and giving you that chance, that you obviously don't give them any reason why they might not stick with you. But otherwise, I think it's just a case of balancing your time and your interests and making sure that you're talking to other people as well, because, you know, if you're not in an office, it can be a little bit lonely, or, you know, you don't have people around to bounce ideas. So I found that just changing your location changing my location is very important. I like to work in libraries, cafes, my room, other people's houses. And that means that I just kind of stay sane. I'm not going to get lost in my own thoughts. But you might be completely different, and you might look forward to being on your own. And obviously with coronavirus, everyone's out of the office anyway. So we're a lot less alone, and we're a lot more online and talking to each other all day anyway. So I just think it's good to have that network around you, whether it is digitally or in person.
So thanks, Miranda. That was great. I just, in case, I guess you're a bit worried, I think what she was kind of saying is, because you don't have to go and work in national papers, and obviously I went freelance straight away. But at first I did have my niche, I guess, was mainly to do with social affairs. I wrote a lot of health stories to begin with, and a lot of, just lots of society, social affairs kind of stuff. And because I quickly started doing that kind of stuff straight away, and the editor liked me, and I got it in on time, and I, you know, was nice to work with and friendly, she then just kept commissioning me, and then other people saw that I was doing that for that section, and then they commissioned me. Maybe it takes a long time before you get the kind of thing that I did, where the editor asked me for coffee and offered me a year-long project. And that came, you know, I'd been a journalist since 2013, the end of, so nearly 7 years. And I got that last year, so 6 years. So I've been a journalist for 6 years before I got offered that kind of really cool big project. But I'm playing the long game here. But there's always different opportunities, and there might be something that you get and it's just for a month or two. But yeah, it's all about building those relationships, and then letting people know what you write about. And also the other great tip that she said there was like getting in touch with editors that you've worked with before and saying going freelance, or I'm freelance, or I've just finished my MA, we did work experience, I'd love to pitch some stories, or go for coffee. Now people are doing Zoom coffees, that's actually a thing, I've done it. So yes. So I'm going to do a few more questions just in case you have questions on that side of things. So Io's going to come back. I think there he is.
Yeah.
So a few questions on pitching. We can't do too many because I think that I'm going to have to do another masterclass just on pitching, but because there's always loads of questions. So just pick the best ones, or pick the ones that are sort of the same kind of topics. Sorry.
I'll go back to Lydia's one, which you didn't answer earlier, about how do you find pitches without Twitter, and then link it to also how would you find call outs online as well.
So is this like if you don't have Twitter and you don't see the call outs, what you can, so okay, I get it now, sorry. I thought it was like how do you pitch, anyway, it doesn't matter what I think. Okay, I see that I haven't answered that one. So there's so many newsletters, which I will link to in my resources thing next week, but there's the Professional Freelancer, there's Shan Meads, she's at Shani on Twitter, so that's why I said Shani. I forgot what it's called, I think it's just Freelance Jobs, something like that. It's got quite a simple name.
Freelance Writing Group.
oh, what happened there? You can write it in the chat. That would be better if somebody jumped in then. Yeah, so freelance writing jobs. So I've just heard what you said. Just registered with my brain. Yeah, so there's that. She puts the call outs in the email. Jessica Evans, who's one of PressPad's ambassadors, she does a newsletter as well. There's also one called Freelance Fraud, which Diora does. There's so many newsletters. I will put them in, but these people just collate that those call outs. Sometimes we do it PressPad's newsletter as well, and also on social media. So Jess Evans does the freelance sessions, and on Instagram. So if you don't have Twitter but you have Instagram, she sometimes posts tweets on there. But yeah, sign up to all the newsletters. But I wouldn't rely too much on that, because as soon as they go out in the newsletters, thousands of people, well, not thousands, but maybe hundreds of people are like pitching the same thing, and the editors get really overwhelmed. I've got a friend who's an editor, and she put something in there, one of the newsletters, I think it was Shan's, and she was just like, I'm never doing it again, because my inbox was just too full. But I think it's good for, what I usually use it for is just kind of see what kind of things they're doing call outs for, like themes, because you can usually see like, oh, quite a few editors are asking for stories on X, Y, and Z, and then you might be able to find some stories to pitch at a different time or to a different editor. They might be interested in that kind of thing if it's like a bit of a trend. One more pitching question.
There was a few questions about how long do you wait after sending your first email? Like, what do you do after sending your first email and not getting a reply?
It depends whether it's news or features. If it's news, you obviously got a quick turnaround usually. You need something, you might have an exclusive, but it's not going to be exclusive in 2 days' time when the report actually gets released, or whatever. So usually with a news one, if it's something that needs to be done that day or the next day, or because you've got different news editors as well. You've got like the planning ones who are like planning forward, so you can pitch them like stories that nobody else is going to get, like FOI stories that they can think about for next week's paper. And then you've got your news editors who are doing like the today kind of news, or tomorrow. So those ones I would pitch, like you could say to them, you can do things like, if I don't hear back, I will by X time, I'll be pitching elsewhere. So I've done that recently with an opinion piece that was very newsy. It was on Primark. I said to the editor, if I don't hear back by midday, I don't know what time it was, I'll assume it's a no, and I'll be pitching elsewhere. She actually didn't get back to me, and I did pitch elsewhere, got a no, and then the first editor got back to me and said, oh no, I was editing something, I missed this email, did the other editor say yes? And I was like, I don't know what I said. I said, oh, I still write it for you, I haven't placed it yet, or something like that, something vague. So yes, if it's a feature, I usually do sort of after, I say 4 days-ish, a week maybe. I'd say like 3 or 4 days actually is better, and then do it one more time the end of the following week or something like that. And then if they don't get back to you, just pitch it elsewhere, and then do a new pitch for them. Something that Donna Ferguson always says is to get to know the section so well that even if they don't want that one, it's because it's like they've got something similar coming up, so you've really pitched folk tailored to that section. So instead of thinking, why aren't they like having my brilliant idea, you need to think of the editor and their slot that they need filling, and what can you do to help them. And just because you want to write something doesn't mean that it's actually that interesting to them or anyone else. Sorry to be rude, but I mean, I do it all the time. I've got a list of ideas, and some of them I've pitched, and some of them just sit on my ideas list. But what you've got to start thinking about is like, this editor's got this section, they need that hole filling. What idea can you come up with that will fill that hole? And start thinking of it that way around, instead of like, oh, my brilliant idea, I can't get it commissioned anywhere. But also save ideas that do get ignored, because the one that I talked about with that got just got ignored, and then later she asked me to pitch. Another editor said to me, "Oh, I've got a slot for the magazine. It was positive news. Have you got any ideas that you can give me today?" So I had a quick look at my list, which I'll talk about later, and I've really wanted to write this. So I was like, oh yeah, and I just reworked it a little bit and sent her the pitch, and she was like, great. And then it was like an amazing spread, like 4 pages or something in the last magazine. So yeah, keep all your ideas because they might come in handy. You can recycle things. Shall I go back and then we'll come back for more? Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cool. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so we've spoken to Miranda. Okay, so what I was just talking about is staying organized. So this is my Trello board, but my Trello board is so long that way that I couldn't fit it all in a screenshot. So this is the end of it. So this is an article I filed on Friday last week, but it's not going in the paper till next Wednesday, so that's in the filed. So then I move stuff around in the cards. So oh sorry, I forgot to say, this is Trello, by the way. It's a software kind of app thing for organizing yourself, your life. You can use it for anything. I use it for freelancing. It's like really helps me. So then I've got different sections. So I've got an ideas list, a rejected list. So always keep your ideas just in case they can come back up again. Then I've got a pitched, and then I've got a commissioned, then filed, published, paid, and then the end is the spiked column where it doesn't get published. So this is the sort of middle part of it. So then as soon as this one's published next Wednesday, I'll move it into this column. And then when it gets paid, I move it into this column. So these were sort of ones from ages ago. They're actually, they're not in order here because some of those were, but anyway, yeah, you can put your deadlines on there as well. And this just helps me out. So just find something that works for you. If it's like you do bullet journaling and you find writing things out. I have to write things down in paper. So I've got a passion planner, which I can't find, but it's a really cool planner. So I do both to try and stay on top of things. There's other tools out there like Asana's one as well. Google spreadsheet, lots of people do that as well. So they have like the article and they might either color code it, and then they have like tabs and stuff. So find something that works for you, but like make sure you stay on top of when things have been paid as well. And also because you're going to have to start chasing, because that's the other thing you have to chase. And then also, as I said, always keep all of your ideas somewhere so that you can go back to them and rework them, or yeah, if an editor asks for a last minute idea, you can throw a few at them that you've got already written down, even if they were rejected by somebody else. Doesn't mean they weren't good, just means they weren't right for that particular section for that editor in that particular week. Because sometimes they'll come back and be like, actually, I think I did want that story, you know, because they might have just been really busy and stressed that week. So getting paid. So this is Wave. So this is actually, see, I'm being very transparent here by putting what I'm being paid. It was more before COVID. So it was, I just got paid quite a lot for that. It's not normally this much. So this is how much money. Sometimes this gets to like 3,500. It got in March, I think it was. I was owed £3,500 and I was like really stressed, as you can imagine. And then sometimes this bit goes up to, you know, £2,000 or something. And then you think, so this is unpaid. There's draft one in there, which I need to go and look at. And then there's all invoices, and then it will come up when it's overdue. And you've got this automatic thing in it where you can send out a automatic email to say the invoice has been late. I prefer to do that. Somebody else, just because it's a bit more impersonal, and it feels more official, and you don't feel like you're sort of sending a really weird email. Hi, just need to get paid, because it's a business, as I said. Some people do is they set up a separate email address and pretend that person is their assistant or finance person, and they write an email from like a pseudonym and then they say, I'm Nicola's PA and I'm just chasing up. And that sounds very official, so you could do that as well. So yeah, on chasing, on getting paid, I've mentioned before, you just have to chase, and you have to sort of do it in a cool, calm, collected way. If it gets really bad and you think, you know what, I don't even want to write for these people anymore, because if they're not paying me for 6 months or whatever, or 2 months, then you could think about burning bridges. Some people, there's loads of Facebook groups, which I'll link to as well next week, and there's one that's Can Pay, Won't Pay, and they name and shame people in there that don't pay or pay slowly, and you can kind of see which places to avoid. I would say that sometimes the people change jobs, so like it might be really bad one year and then it's like good the next year. And some people even take it to Twitter. If it gets really bad and they're not getting paid, they'll take it to Twitter and name and shame in public. Obviously you're never going to write for them again, but you deserve to get paid. I think there's probably some more questions on that, so I might save that, because we are, I've been talking for ages. So here's a few ideas just to get you started from tomorrow or from Monday, but there's no better time to start. So this is something that a friend of mine once did. He did 10 pitches in 10 days. I think it was 10 pitches in 10 days. Yeah, sounds cool. Probably that. And he just, sent a pitch a day. And I think the first 3 got rejected or ignored, or the first 4. And then by the 5th one, he got a small commission, or they didn't need him for that one, but they asked if he could write something else. Again, always say yes. I mean, don't if you actually can't do it, because it's something completely out of your scope, but try and say yes. And then by the end of the pitch thing, he got an article in the Guardian, a travel piece as well, which is like the holy grail. I'd love to do a travel piece for the Guardian. Then another idea is just to email tomorrow, start emailing and asking about shifts. You could ask about shifts from home, especially now during the pandemic. Still, like most offices, most newsrooms are not back, or at least only back a little bit. So they probably will still be doing shifts from home. So you could start emailing. Contact editors you met on work experience and ask if they are commissioning, if they had a commissioning budget, if they want to meet you with coffee, or just say, I'm now freelance. So do exactly what Miranda does. I did this in September as well. I said, hi, I'm leaving HuffPost. I'm going freelance again. Just letting you know that I'm available. It might not work immediately. I did it for Positive News, actually. Didn't get anything. And then suddenly I've got loads of stuff from them, because I did a paternity cover, covered somebody's paternity leave for 2.5 weeks. So yeah, it doesn't always, it's not like always instant gratification, but it's still worth doing. So subscribe to all the newsletters, and then an idea that you could do is challenge yourself to do 1 pitch for the call out a week. So just give it a go. Why not? And then the other thing that I did when I left HuffPost was I did a big Twitter thread of the work that I was most proud of, and I specifically chose the things that I would be happy to do going forward. I didn't choose the articles that I didn't enjoy writing. I chose the best ones, but also the ones I enjoyed the most, and then announced to the world that I was freelance. And I got an editor email me, say, oh, hey, do you want to go for coffee? Went for coffee, pitched an idea to them straight away, because I had one that fitted, and then I wrote it for them. So that does work. Obviously helps if you've like built your personal brand, which is definitely something we're going to have to do a whole masterclass on. But there's a bit, quite a big bit of Laura's first masterclass, which was like preparing to get a job after lockdown or after the pandemic. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but a big part of that was about your personal branding and the way you use Twitter and everything. So watch that one, it's on YouTube, and actually I'll ask one of the team to get me the link and I'll put it in the chat afterwards, because I was going to go into personal branding and I just, obviously I don't have time. So okay, this I saved this one till last. This is Grace Holiday. She's got an amazing masterclass next week, I think, or the week after, all about writing about your identity, basically, which is really cool. But I saved this one to last because I completely agree with her in every way, because I love freelancing. I love it. Ooh. So I'll let Grace tell you why it's good. Oh no, I've done it again, sorry.
Hi, my name is Grace Holiday. I've been a freelance journalist for just over 5 years now. The thing that I wish people had said to me before I became freelance is that while it will be really hard work, and there's going to be some really challenging times, and there's going to be times that you don't know why you would ever, be freelance rather than just work in a secure, stable job in an office, I wish somebody had said to me that there will be times where you are so filled with joy that you became freelance, you will pick up your phone and your friends will be talking about how tired they are, and you'll be like, oh, I don't have to get up till 10 today, I'm still in bed when everybody else is commuting. There will be afternoons where you've already smashed your work targets for that week and you just decide to go for lunch in the middle of the day, and you sit there with a cocktail or a burger at like 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, and it sinks in finally that you wouldn't be able to do that had you not gone freelance and changed from one kind of lifestyle that's based around an office or a 9-to-5 structure into a different kind of way of working. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Basically what I'm trying to say is, yes, there will be lots of challenges, but also it's important to bear in mind that there will be good things and times when you can't believe how lucky you are to be doing what you're doing. So they will come, and look forward to them.
Thanks, Grace. I love that. I was like beaming, as you could probably see. I was beaming when I first watched it, and I was beaming again then. Yeah, honestly, sometimes I think I'm so lucky to have the job that I have, and be freelance is the best. So yeah, I mean, again, there are challenges, it's not the best for everyone, but for me, it's the best. So here's some final thoughts. So think of yourself as a business. It does help. It helps when you're asking for a fee, because you're not thinking, oh, what am I worth? You're thinking, I'm a business and I'm providing a service, and I'm providing something of value. I'm helping them as much as they're helping me. Don't give up. Persistence is key. Again, if you can watch the IGTV with Donna Ferguson, she is the queen of this. She's so good. If she wants to write for a particular section, she will just keep pitching until they say to her, okay, this is actually what we're looking for, and then they'll commission her. Think about your personal brand. So do watch that Laura Garcia masterclass that I was talking about just now. I think it was really good and makes so much sense. I think I also touched on it in the networking one as well, but networking is king. I don't think that makes sense, but I decided that did. So I did a networking masterclass. It's also on YouTube, which is extremely relevant. Get yourself a mentor. I did a mentoring masterclass. This is really important when you're freelance, because there's loads of mentoring schemes that are in jobs, and also getting a mentor, so you miss out on that. And you miss out on a lot of the professional development stuff that you kind of get in jobs. So you have to do your own professional development. So I'm always finding courses and doing like that freelancer away day. I did the Newsflash thing earlier this year. I just did Abigail Edge's freelance summer camp. So I'm always spending money, but you have to think of yourself as a business and think, okay, how much money am I going to spend on like professional development? But one way is to get a mentor, because they're free, but they're also so good, and they can also give you contacts to get commissions. Asking for a fee is not rude. it's never rude. Please, like, never think of it like that. Even if you've never written before, even if you've never written for a, got published by a national publication before, for example, it's still not rude to ask for a fee. Always ask for a fee. Ask for more money if you're brave enough. And to join a freelance community, or do what I've done and join loads. So I'm in the Professional Freelancer Slack workspace. I'm in the Society for Freelance Journalists Slack workspace. I'm in Just Journalism, the Newsflash, loads of Facebook groups. Basically, I'm in loads of them. And sometimes it's great because you just need somebody to just be like, oh, this really annoying thing happened, and then they can tell you, yeah, it was annoying, or no, you need to stop moaning, kind of thing. I will go to questions now. Okay, Io, back to Io.
Okay, back to the questions. I think I've got a few more to ask. There were a few questions about whether doing an MA or having NCTJ credits is important when you're going freelance.
Ooh. It kind of, I think yes, but it does depend on what kind of journalism you want to go into. So if you are somebody who just wants to be like an opinion writer or write personal essays, then you're more of a writer really than a journalist. So you don't necessarily need those because you're writing your own personal experience. If you want to be a freelance news journalist, then yes, you do need some kind of qualification, because when you first start out, they will ask, have you got a qualification, especially if you go into like investigations, because you need to know all about legal stuff. But even on shifts, one of my first Guardian shifts, I was sent to a court hearing for the guy who killed Joe Cox, and it was quite a dramatic one. It was where he yelled from the dock, and my shorthand wasn't great. I did do shorthand at uni, but I hadn't used it that much, and I mean, it was fine because I just wrote really fast as well as using shorthand. It was like this kind of blur of, but actually there was someone in there from the Sunday Times who was just writing really fast and not using shorthand. So if you don't have it, you don't have it, but it would have really helped if I'd have kept it up a bit more than I had, and like actually practiced it after you do like the tests and stuff at uni. If you stop using it, then it's really difficult to get back into it. So there's that, but there was the main thing that was media law, like knowing the legal. I worked all day with a lawyer, going back and forth, like saying, seeing what I could publish and what I couldn't. But in the initial stages in the courthouse, when I got out, I think if I hadn't have had any training, I would have been so stressed, because I wouldn't have known any media law, and I wouldn't have known whether I was allowed to say half the stuff that happened. And that was when I was basically on the phone to the editor saying, this is what's happened, and then filing a story from my phone, the initial story that went as the breaking news thing. So yeah, having a qualification was good, and it also gave me the confidence as well to know that I can actually do that, although it was really scary. I didn't feel that confident at the time, but then all day I was going back and forth with a media lawyer, and you kind of have to push against them a little bit, but also working with a media lawyer, like I'd already been taught by a media lawyer for the whole of my MA. So yeah, it does kind of depend, but they will be looking for some kind of journalism qualification. I did an MA purely because it got paid for by the Scott Trust bursary. I wouldn't have been able to afford that otherwise, and what I probably would have done was try and do an NCTJ, or like I think you could do like you used to be able, I don't know if you still can, but you used to be able to do like it remote, and do modules when you could afford them. So I would have probably worked alongside trying to do the modules. But it was partly like confidence for me. I did my MA at City University in London.
Okay, next question. How often can you pitch to the same editor?
As many, just keep going until they start saying yes. That's what Donna Ferguson would say. So, you know, I listen to what she says, and she once just kept pitching, and then they realized she really wanted to get in, so they said to her, look, this is actually what the kind of thing we're looking for. And so she pitched something that was exactly what they were looking for. But yeah, once you've written an article for them, like, just keep pitching, and then that's how you get regular work. The best thing about getting established as a freelance journalist, so obviously this is all about introduction and basics of freelance journalism. You know, maybe further down the line I'll do one that's a bit more advanced, which would be, once you've got established, it's about how you get regular work. And there was a stage where I wasn't, like, I often don't actually pitch, a bit like Miranda, because you start getting editors who know exactly what kind of things you do, and they'll just email you and say, do you fancy doing something on X, Y, and Z? Or they'll be like, we've got a slot for the profile interview feature, can you find some people for it? And they, you know, you're going to get some work, so you quickly find some people. So yes, I'm talking so much, so I've just realised the time. So there is no limit, just keep doing it. As long as you apply and you keep coming up with good ideas. But I think if you're getting no answer whatsoever, you need to start thinking about whether you've actually read their section and tailored the pitch to them. Because if you're just pitching something that's completely irrelevant to them, then like, you're never going to get in. So you have to make sure you fit it. I've just seen someone, sorry, just to jump in, said, what does filed mean? That means when you send the article to them. Sorry. It comes from back in the day when you had when you wrote on a typewriter and you had to, like, file it in a filing cabinet, I guess, I don't know, and so it's called filed. So that's what that is. Does that mean commissioned? No. So commissioned is when the editor says they want an article and they're saying yes, they're basically entering into a sort of contract, I guess, with you. And then filed is when you actually send the article to them. Io?
Okay, next question. As freelance work largely takes place at home, how do you manage to separate your work life and private life? I know you talked a bit about it earlier, but...
Oh, it's so difficult. One thing I've done is I've got a work phone now. It's like a pay-as-you-go thing. And the reason was because I once interviewed somebody on this, and he randomly started WhatsApping me, like not that inappropriate, like, not, you know, there was no dick pic, but it was kind of like inappropriate. I was like, I interviewed you about 3 years ago, and he just started WhatsApping me. So I got a work phone, and also so that I can switch it off and be like, I'm not working. So my work email is on there, Slack is on there. I now call, all my editors, not all of them, because some of them still got that number, but I try and make my editors use this number when they call me. So yeah, I'm really trying to do that. It is really difficult. Another thing that I'm doing is I'm going to have, like, a proper sort of my spare room in my new place. It's going to have, like, an office. I think that's going to help. But quite often I would go out and work, a bit like Miranda, work somewhere else and then come home, so you're still getting that feeling of going out. Or go and work with friends in a cafe shop, because I know quite a lot of freelancers now, so I've been and worked with freelancers in cafes. Yeah, it's difficult, but you have to be strict with yourself, like, create boundaries, and learn, like, what's, like, there's a really good freelance journalist called Jenny Stallard who writes a lot about well-being. So her Freelance Feels Instagram, I've always got loads of tips from there about, like, self-care, basically. Know what works for you. Don't take your work phone and while you're having a bubble bath, you know, things like that. home, yeah, just like clearing away at the end of the day. Yeah, like I had a desk in my kitchen, and I would clean up at the end of the day, and then, you know, turn on Netflix and put Friends on, or put a podcast on while I was cooking, so that I'm not like constantly, it's just staring at, you know, my emails, hoping an editor replies to me. Okay, I think we've only basically got time for like 2 more questions, so it's up to you to choose the best ones.
2 more questions.
If you have got questions that I haven't answered and they're really like important, please send me a DM on Twitter, or you can email me at nicola@presspad.co.uk. I'm happy to answer them. I know this is the kind of subject where everyone's got loads of questions, so got any more for me?
Is it imperative to have a niche, so you're a go-to expert in a field?
I'd say that if you're a news reporter, not necessarily, although you kind of are a niche because you'd be like a national news reporter, or you do kind of have a bit of a niche, but it's quite broad as a news reporter. But as a feature writer, there's so many things that fit under like lifestyle, for example. I know lifestyle journalists who write about beauty, for example, and I know lifestyle journalists who write about FGM. So so you could have like quite a broad niche as lifestyle, so you just get used to writing the kind of things that you would see in like the is the T2 called the T2 and the G2, you know, like the Sunday supplements in magazines, that kind of stuff. But I would say that it does help to have a bit of, it's all about your personal branding. It's like, these are the kind of things I'm interested in and I'm good at writing about and I've got the contacts for. So you don't have to have like a really specific niche. But like, for example, social affairs and education were kind of when my niches for the first like 3.5 years, I'd say. But I was also a news reporter, so I wrote about anything and everything. But freelancing, I was mainly would write. But then sometimes I'd be on like writing global development because I got asked to do something. So you have to be flexible, but I think it does help for them to get to know you and what kind of things you're interested in. And then you'll find the editors who are interested in the same kind of things as you, and then you'll get the holy grail where they'll just keep messaging you all the time going, have you got a story idea for me? Which is what I get all the time. From one particular set of editors, which is amazing. It does get a bit hard when you kind of want to change your niche and you've still got the editors messaging you and you're thinking, I don't really want to write about that kind of thing anymore. So that's kind of like where I'm at the moment. I'm kind of like, I'm trying to be a bit more broader with what I'm writing about. One more question, I think.
Okay, finally, I'm going to you do one of the questions from Facebook.
Oh, yes.
How do you stand your ground when it comes to getting paid for work, and how do you convince editors that your work has value?
Oh, stand your ground. I guess this is a question for when you first start and you haven't got paid yet. So I pitched a story before it did an internship, and I always remember, I'm not going to say where it was a small publication, I'll just say that. They said, oh, do you want paying for this? Which I thought was a really weird question. I was like, well, yeah. I actually was pitching it because I hadn't done any journalism at this stage, just before my MA, and so I was just pitching it to try and get some experience. And I said, well, yeah, if there's I would like to get paid. And then I said something like, but you know, I just want to get published, or something stupid. What I should have said was like, of course, yeah, what's the fee? Or I should have got in there first and asked what the fee was. You see, you live and learn when you get older. But if you go in there super confident and just say, okay, what's the fee? And don't apologize. Don't try and play yourself down, say you're sorry, you know, oh, I don't have that much experience, you know, just act, you've got to fake it until you make it. And just pitch and say, yeah, what's the fee? And that's how they'll see value in you, because they'll think, okay, she's taking herself seriously, or he's taking himself seriously, we better. And then, yeah, about the value, you've just got to remember that you're a business and you're providing a service for them. They're not doing you, I've said that before, haven't I? Yeah, they're not doing you some big favor by publishing your work. You're actually doing something for them. So just keep reminding yourself of that. Like, you're actually providing them with something, and that you're selling. You're a salesperson, essentially. Which I know writers and journalists don't like to think of themselves as salespeople, but you're essentially a salesperson now, and you're selling your idea, and it's a product or a service, however you like to look at it. Could be a product, really. So yeah, you're selling it, and it deserves to be paid for. That's my advice. Okay, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to end. I know there's so many questions. I will be sending out the resources next week when I'm back in the office on Tuesday. If in that none of my questions have been your question hasn't been answered, then or even if not, please do just like send me a DM. I'm going camping this weekend, so I might not get back to you until Tuesday anyway. In fact, I won't, because I'm trying to have this work-life balance thing that you asked about, Io. So yes, so what we need you to do is a few things for us, because obviously we're providing all these things for free. So we would love for you to tweet if you found this useful, and use the hashtag PressPad remote. So yeah, please shout about it, because we're trying to get funding so that we can keep running these things for free. And so we need all your help, and we also need you to fill in the feedback form, which Io is going to put the link to, and also I can share a thing that you can use your camera, a QR code. Here we go. So that's to remind you to tweet, please, or Instagram stories also now. And then you can also go to take a photo of this, and it'll take you straight to the feedback form, and you can leave some feedback for me. Next week we have an amazing, really special masterclass with Frank Starling. He's our diversity and inclusion specialist, and he's going to be doing a masterclass on tackling imposter syndrome. And it's all about bringing your whole self to work, and it's open for everyone, but it's mainly but it'll be especially useful for people from underrepresented groups. I suffered from really bad imposter syndrome when I was at The Guardian, actually, when I started, so I would have found it really useful. So I'm really looking forward to it myself. I was going to put a link in the chat, and then next Wednesday we have an awesome journalist from the Health Service Journal, Nick Kitunu, I think it's pronounced, and he is going to be talking about developing a niche. So if you were asking about that, or you're worried about having a specialism or a niche, then make sure you tune in. It will be at 1 p.m. on Instagram Live, and Io is the interviewer. I think I remembered everything, right? Not sure. Hope so. I've just been talking for ages. People are saying goodbye and thank you. That's nice. Thank you so much. Yes, please sign up for Frank's masterclass. Honestly, it's going to be amazing, isn't it, Io? I think it's going to be really good. Yeah. Oh, yes, sign up to the newsletter. Yes, her newsletter's amazing. One went out today and it was really good. Okay, I'm going to sign off now, but thanks so much for joining me again and listening to me bang on about one of my favourite topics, which is freelancing. So yeah, it was great to have you, and thanks for all the really good questions. And thanks Io, and thanks Amber, who's been doing the live tweeting and monitoring on Facebook. Okay, see ya, bye.